Negotiators push for deal in overtime climate talks. And to details. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received on Saturday Mr. Laszlo Kover, the Speaker of the National Assembly of Hungary. Presidential spokesperson Ambassador Bassam Radi said the head of state welcomed the Hungarian top parliamentarian, expressing appreciation for the deeply rooted bilateral ties that bind the two states and are reflected in extended friendly relations. For his part, Kover stressed his honor to meet with the president, hailing their distinguished Budapest-Cairo relations, adding that his country is really keen to boost them in all domains, particularly in the parliamentarian arena. Radi added that the meeting reviewed ways of activating mutual cooperation, boosting bilateral ties, pushing them into new horizons in all fields. The spokesman also highlighted that both sides discussed a number of issues of mutual concern, especially the Russian-Ukrainian war and its global negative repercussions. The meeting was attended by Councillor Hanafi El-Gibali, Speaker of House of Representatives, and Hungarian Ambassador to Egypt, Andras Kovacs. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi held a meeting on Saturday in which he reviewed the executive situation of a number of projects carried out by the Engineering Authority of the Armed Forces nationwide, particularly in the roads and bridges sector, the architecture projects, as well as the new administrative capital. Here are more details.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi held a meeting on Saturday with the head of the Engineering Authority, General Hisham al-Swaifi, Presidential Advisor for Urban Planning, Amir Said Ahmed, and a number of top officials. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said the meeting discussed the executive situation of a number of projects carried out by the Engineering Authority nationwide, particularly in the roads and bridge sector, the architecture projects, as well as the new administrative capital. In this context, Radi stated that the President was briefed on the process of developing the roads and accessing Greater Cairo to solve the traffic crowds problems, as well as the comprehensive renovation of Muqattam area. The head of state also followed up the latest steps of improving the services sector in different Cairo suburbs, especially the central modern markets, cultivating new gardens, building pedestrian bridges, as well as libraries, adding a cultural aspect coinciding with the full modernization of Greater Cairo. Radi added that the meeting tackled the engineering and construction situation of a number of buildings in the new administrative capital, namely the diplomatic district and its surrounding area.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres had a group photo with volunteer youths who helped in organizing the conference. The organization also granted the youth certificates in appreciation for the great role in making the event a success. Earlier, President of the COP27 Climate Conference, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, said the vast majority of nations attending Crunch climate talks in Sharm el-Sheikh say Egypt's proposed package of resolutions is balanced. Shoukry said parties must now rise to the occasion in a new conference Saturday morning. The details.
President of the COP27 Climate Conference, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, told the nearly 200 nations gathered in Sharm el-Sheikh to rise to the occasion and reach a consensus on a fair climate agreement on Saturday. Speaking a day after the summit was supposed to end, Shoukry added that the vast majority of nations attending the talks say Egypt's proposed package of resolutions is balanced and constitutes a potential breakthrough that can lead to consensus. Shoukry stated after listening and looking into different perspectives and points of views, texts have been prepared on 3 issues in a balanced manner, adding that they will be a starting point to move forward. He said the issue now rests with the will of the parties. It is the parties who must rise to the occasion and take upon themselves the responsibility of finding the areas of convergence. A final text to conclude the summit has yet to be agreed, with outstanding issues including whether a new fund would be created to help nations with the damage wrought by climate change and whether to call for a phase down of all fossil fuels. Shukri added that consultations with concerned groups of party states over the draft text still continue. Foreign Minister stressed there was no room or opportunity for any of the groups in the conference to say that all the interests were reflected in these texts.
COP27 President Sameh Shukri said on Saturday that it's better look at the positive when asked about rumored concerns among parties regarding an agreement on loss and damage finance. Parties were holding final consultations on the outcomes of their negotiations just hours after the United Nations Climate Agency published a draft proposal for a deal to tackle the issue of loss and damage. It proposes a new fund to help countries cope with the cost of climate damage. EU climate policy chief Frans Timmermans earlier expressed concern that some countries were resisting efforts to agree on bolder emissions cuts in this decade. He did not name the countries. UN climate talks poised for deal creating disaster fund despair, lack of progress at climate talks, yet hope blooms. A group of states known as the High Ambition Coalition, including the UK and Germany, has urged for an agreement to be reached on having a key warming goal part of the final document at COP27, the UN climate talks in Egypt. The United Nations Climate Agency on Saturday published a draft proposal for a deal to tackle the issue of loss and damage that said the COP27 summit would agree to launch a new fund to help countries cope with the cost of climate damage. The draft, which the nearly 200 countries at the COP27 summit in Egypt will now consider and potentially change before deciding whether to approve, would agree to establish a fund for responding to loss and damage calls by developing countries. For such a fund has dominated the UN negotiations over the last 2 weeks, pushing the summit past its scheduled Friday finish as countries struggle to strike a deal. The draft proposal would kick many of the most controversial decisions on the fund into next year, when a transitional committee would make recommendations for countries to then adopt at the COP28 climate summit in November 2023. After years of rich countries resisting climate vulnerable countries' calls for loss and damage funding, the European Union said on Thursday it would back a new fund if high-emitting emerging economies like China also paid into it, rather than just large historical emitters like the EU and United States. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un boasted that his recently tested intercontinental ballistic missile is another variable and maximum capacity